Have you ever had that feeling, where you're looking at something, like a project maybe, or, your finances, or even just getting to the end of the week?
Yeah.
And you think, I don't know if I have enough. I don't know if I have enough to get through this.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of a universal feeling, isn't it? That sense
Yeah.
of scarcity.
It is.
And that's what we're going to take a deep dive into today.
Right.
Exploring this whole idea of provision and sufficiency.
Yeah.
When resources feel really limited.
Exactly.
So,
it's interesting. You know how
yeah.
that feeling of not enough?
Yeah.
It seems so ingrained in us as human beings. I mean, no matter what time period you're in,
Yeah.
no matter what the challenges are that we're facing.
Exactly.
It almost makes you wonder if it's just part of, the human experience.
Totally. So for this deep dive, you shared a passage from the Christian Bible.
Yes.
2 Kings chapter 4,
Yeah.
verses 38 through 44. And you have it dated, according to your notes, Saturday, March 22nd, 2025.
Uh-huh.
And there's this one verse in particular that it really kind of jumped out at me. Verse 43.
Okay.
The servant asks Elisha about this, feeding 100 men with just a little bit of food. And Elisha just replies,
Right.
give it to the people to eat. For this is what the Lord says, they will eat and have some left over.
Wow.
And it's just such a, it's such a contrast, the practical concern versus this absolute faith.
Yeah.
That's immediately what's so interesting about this, isn't it?
It is.
It's like this tension between the very human reaction to a situation that seems impossible versus this trust in something else.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like a different kind of possibility.
Yes. And that's what we're going to unpack today.
Yeah.
What can we learn from this ancient text?
Right.
About navigating these feelings of scarcity that we all experience. And how can we maybe even open ourselves to unexpected provision?
Okay.
Now, your notes kind of highlight two key areas that we should explore.
Yeah.
One is this idea that that our resources might have a potential to be multiplied.
Right.
That we don't even realize.
Okay.
And this other concept of a power beyond ourselves that has sovereignty over the natural world.
Okay. So let's dive into that first one.
Yeah.
The multiplication of resources.
Yeah, let's go there.
So we really have to picture this scene.
Uh-huh.
So you've got a man who brings 20 loaves of barley bread to Elisha.
Okay.
Now, in a small context, maybe that seems like, okay, that's decent, that's a fair amount of bread. But this is to feed 100 men.
Okay.
So from a purely logical standpoint, you can understand why the servant's worried. It's just the numbers just don't add up.
Yeah, it's like you're confronted with a reality that seems mathematically impossible.
Exactly.
Like you're trying to fill a stadium with one bucket of water.
Right.
And you're like, this is just not going to work.
Exactly.
Right.
And you can just imagine the servant's stress in this situation.
Right.
He's got a responsibility here. Got to feed these people.
Yeah.
And he's looking at what he has and he's like,
it's laughable.
It's laughable. But then you've got Elisha who just comes in.
Right.
And he's just so direct, so confident, driven by this really deep faith.
Yeah.
And he doesn't say, let's, cut this bread really thin or let's just feed these people first. He just says, give it to them.
Give it to them.
And what strikes you most about that, about that initial instruction?
Oh, I think it's the complete lack of what we might call a practical solution.
Yeah.
He doesn't try to strategize.
Right.
He doesn't try to ration or anything.
Exactly. It's just this trust that something beyond the immediate reality is going to intervene.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the story goes that everybody eats and there's leftovers.
It's amazing.
It really is.
It's amazing.
It makes you question.
It really does.
How do we even understand how resources work?
Yeah. And this is where it gets really thought-provoking for me.
Okay.
Because your notes point out this key takeaway.
Yeah.
Which is that there's this potential for our resources to expand beyond what we can initially perceive.
Right.
And I think that resonates in so many areas, beyond just food,
Okay.
Think about time, for example.
Yeah.
We've all had those moments where we just feel so swamped.
Right.
But somehow, if we just start tackling things with focus, we manage to get so much more done than we thought was possible. And it's not like we're literally multiplying the hours in the day.
Yeah.
But it's the output, what we're able to produce.
The output feels that way.
Feels that way.
Yeah. It's like the perception of our limitations is more restrictive than the actual limitations themselves.
Right.
Almost like just the act of engaging with the challenge, even if we feel like we don't have what it takes, it somehow unlocks like a different resourcefulness in us or a different efficiency.
Totally.
What parts of this idea of multiplication do you think are most applicable in our daily lives?
I think it's the emphasis on faith again.
Okay.
Because your notes suggest that it's not just about the quantity that we start with, but our willingness to act in faith that can kind of open the door to provision. It's like the initial step, even when it feels really small or really insufficient, that can somehow catalyze a greater outcome.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a situation like that?
Yeah, definitely.
Where
I can think of like research projects early in my career where the funding was really tight.
Okay.
We had very limited budgets for equipment and, but we just moved forward with this belief that we could make it work. And unexpectedly, like a collaboration opportunity came up.
Wow.
And that provided access to much more advanced technology.
Wow, okay.
That we could never have afforded on our own.
Wow.
So it wasn't like our budget literally increased, but it was provision that materialized because we took those initial steps of faith with just the little bit that we had.
It's almost like...
It makes you wonder if that initial action of faith signals something.
That's so fascinating.
It really is.
So interesting.
It's like we put energy into something.
Right.
Even if it's a small amount of energy, it can create this ripple effect.
Yeah. And then the third takeaway from this part of the passage, according to your notes, is that even seemingly small contributions can become really significant when offered with trust or in service, like that 20 loaves might have felt like just a drop in the ocean for 100 hungry people. But in that context of trust and distribution, it became abundance. It makes you reconsider like the value of the small acts of generosity or effort that we often dismiss, It's insignificant.
It shifts the focus from the size of the offering to the spirit in which it's given and the context in which it's received.
Right.
A small gesture of help might have a way bigger impact on someone than we can even see in the moment.
Exactly.
It's about the interconnectedness of resources and how even modest contributions can play a vital role in the bigger picture.
Okay, so that's the first part. The potential for our resources to be multiplied. Now let's turn to the second aspect that your notes highlight. Which is God's sovereignty over nature.
Yes.
And this is a little bit of a different angle.
It is.
Right? We're moving from this idea of quantity to like the safety and purity of our essential resources.
Right.
So this part of the story comes from earlier in the same chapter.
Yeah.
And there's a situation where a pot of stew has been poisoned because some wild gourds were gathered by the prophets.
Yeah.
And they didn't know they were toxic.
Right.
Can you imagine? Like the fear and the panic, this thing that's supposed to sustain you, food, all of a sudden becomes this source of danger, like a threat.
Yeah, very primal.
Yeah. And it sounds like a pretty irreversible situation. You know? Like once the poison is in the stew, what can you do? You can't just, filter it out.
Right.
But then Elisha intervenes again. And his action is kind of unexpected.
Yeah.
He throws in some flour.
Yeah.
Just flour, Just
the seemingly ordinary ingredient.
Right.
Yeah.
And the result, is a complete purification.
Yeah.
The stew becomes safe to eat.
It's amazing.
It's a seemingly simple act.
Yeah.
Leading to this profound and transformative outcome.
Yeah.
It really speaks to this idea of a power that can act upon and alter the natural world.
Right.
Even things that appear harmful or beyond repair.
Beyond human repair.
That's such a powerful image.
It is.
Especially when we think about the toxic situations that we face in our own lives,
Totally.
Whether it's difficult relationships or just negative thought patterns that we get into.
Or a challenging work environment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These things can feel so deeply ingrained and impossible to cleanse.
Almost impossible.
Yeah.
Like, it's suggesting that even in situations where we feel like things are contaminated or they're irreparable, there's still that potential for unexpected intervention and positive change, you know? Like, just the act of throwing in the flour might seem insignificant,
but
it brings about a complete reversal.
Yes.
So it really encourages us to look for solutions in unexpected places and to consider that the remedy might be something very simple.
It's like
you know,
it's like that
unexpected piece of advice that changes our whole perspective on a problem. Or that small act of self-care that heals a deeper wound.
Yes. Your notes mention that this really highlights how positive change can occur in ways that we just don't anticipate.
We don't see coming.
Yeah. Can you think of a time, either for yourself or for someone you know, where that happened?
I remember when a close friend of mine was facing this like massive legal challenge. They'd explored all the conventional avenues, you know, and they just felt completely defeated. And then through a random connection, they were introduced to a lawyer who specialized in this very niche area of law, and it turned out to be exactly what they needed.
Wow.
It wasn't a grand, you know, intervention or anything. It was just this unexpected connection.
Is the flower in the pot. Right. This like seemingly insignificant thing.
That completely changed the trajectory of their whole case.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it really showed me that solutions can emerge from the most unexpected places.
And the final point you draw from this second part of the passage is really interesting. You connect this sovereignty over nature to our own responsibility in using natural resources. It suggests that when we manage these resources with care and consideration, there's this trust that they can be sufficient and even blessed. It's a very different perspective than just viewing nature as something to be exploited.
Exactly. It's like we're stewards of nature rather than just consumers, you know. And it's about recognizing this deeper interconnectedness and having this faith that when we act responsibly toward the resources around us, there's this potential for sustainability and provision that goes beyond, you know, just our immediate calculations.
Right.
So much bigger than that.
So as we bring this deep dive together, we've looked at these two really powerful ideas from this text. Right? The possibility of our resources expanding in these unexpected ways, even from a small starting point. Right? And the comforting notion that there's a power that can bring about healing and positive transformation in these situations that feel just totally broken.
Completely broken. Yeah, and what's so amazing is that while this comes from this very specific context, these underlying principles, you know, the power of belief, the potential for these unexpected solutions, the importance of how we relate to what we have, it just feels incredibly relevant to us today, you know?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Like the challenges that we face and the anxieties that we feel.
And that brings us to a moment for you, our listener, to kind of pause and reflect.
You know, which of these two ideas, the multiplication of resources or the sovereignty over difficult circumstances, resonates most with you right now? Maybe think about a time in your life when you felt like you just didn't have enough. Whether it was time or money or support or anything, or just, you know,
whatever it was.
Or maybe a situation that just felt deeply troubled or beyond repair. How might these ancient stories offer a new lens through which to view those experiences?
And looking back, did you see any unexpected growth or provision? Did a situation that felt hopeless resolve itself in a way that you could never have imagined at the time?
And finally, here's a thought to really chew on. What if even a small amount can hold the potential for unexpected abundance? And if even these deeply challenging situations can be turned around in surprising ways, what possibilities might be open to you right now that you haven't even recognized? Is there a small step of faith that you could take
Yeah.
Is there a different perspective you could consider that might unlock something that you're not even seeing right now?
Right.
It's something that really makes me pause.
It's a challenge.
Yeah.
It's a challenge to move beyond our purely logical, sometimes limited view of our circumstances.
Yeah.
And to just be open to the possibilities
Yes.
that are beyond our current understanding. Yeah.
Thanks so much for taking this deep dive with us.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope it's given you some fresh perspectives.